Hi, sir. We're Group 6, and today we'll be presenting on ethics and corporate governance with a specific focus on the issue of ESG washing. We'll be referring to the answers in Part A and Part B of our group assignment. I'm Tan Yu Xiang, and I'll be starting off the presentation today. Together with me are Natalie Chow Kai Wen, Lau Wen Kang, Law Jing Yuan, and Nick Adam Harif, and each of us will be covering different parts of this topic. Here's a quick overview of what we'll be covering today. First, we'll explore the ethical evaluation of ESG washing, then the techniques to detect ESG washing and the economic consequences of ESG washing. After that, we'll be talking about the role of shareholder and stakeholder activism in preventing corporate misconduct. Finally, we will be talking about Siam Darby plantations, governance reforms. So, what is ESG washing? To begin, ESG washing, also known as greenwashing, refers to the act of misrepresenting or exaggerating a company's environmental, social, or governance efforts to appear more ethical or sustainable than it actually is. Example includes claims on being carbon neutral without reducing emissions and ignoring human rights in labor policies. These misleading claims are designed to build a false image and win over investors, regulators, or the public. Now, let's evaluate ESG washing from an ethical perspective using three key theories: utilitarianism, deontology, and virtue ethics. Utilitarianism looks at the consequences of actions, which the goal is to maximize overall happiness or societal welfare. ESG washing might create short term gains, like boosting investor confidence. However, it causes long term harm, such as loss of trust, fines, and reputational damage. Since it reduces overall welfare, utilitarianism views ESG washing as unethical. Deontology, introduced by Immanuel Kant, focuses on moral duties rather than outcomes. Companies have a duty to be honest and transparent with their stakeholders. ESG washing violates this duty by deceiving others. Even if the result seems positive, from this lens, misleading stakeholders is inherently wrong because it uses people as a means to an end, and hence is viewed as unethical. Virtue ethics emphasizes the character and values of individuals, especially leaders. Traits like honesty and integrity are essential. ESG washing shows a lack of these virtues and reflects poorly on top management, which shows that it is unethical. So, across all three theories, ESG washing is clearly seen as unethical. Next, I'll be passing it to Natalie Chow to talk about the two techniques to detect ESG washing.
Thank you, Tang Xiang. Now that we've covered what ESG washing is and its ethical issues, let's explore two key techniques used to detect it. The first technique is third party ESG ratings and verification. Independent ESG agency like MSCI and Sustainalytics assesses companies using objective standards. Their ratings help verify if a firm's self-reported ESG efforts are genuine. If a company internal reports looks better than its external ESG scores, that's a red flag. Study shows third-party ratings improve transparency, reduce information gaps, and increase investors' trust. But if companies only rely on their own unverified data, the risk of misleading stakeholders increases. Comparing ratings across agencies help uncover inconsistency, which is a key in spotting greenwashing. The second technique is textual analysis of ESG reports. This method looks at the tone and language in ESG disclosure. ESG washing firms often use vague promotional terms like carbon neutral by 2050 without solid plans. Researchers like Zhang developed the Blur Index to detect this vague language. Heichel and Hirsch also found firms use future focused buzzwords to avoid real performance data. And textual analysis help investors spot red flags in reports, filtering genuine sustainability from empty market spin. Now I would like to pass the time to Lau Wen Kang.
Thank you for Natalie Chokaiwan, and I will move for part to continue this point, which is economic two economic consequences of ESG washings. So now we will look at the two key economic consequences of ESG washing. As more companies rush to showcase their sustainability efforts, many exaggerate or falsely represent their ESG performance. But ESG washing doesn't just damage a company's image; it has seriously economic impact. So we are focusing on two major today, which is the consequences one: declines in investor confidence and market value, and secondly, legal and regulatory compliance. So when we are moving to the next slide, it's about the economic consequences of ESG washing for the points. So the point one, loss of investor confidence and market value. Firstly, ESG washing significantly damage investor trust. Investors today place high value on transparency and genuine ESG efforts. When they discover that a company has met misleading claims, they often withdraw capital. This withdrawal can lead to sharp stock price drops and even cause long-term damage to the firm's reputation. Companies involved in ESG washing may also be excluded from ESG investment portfolio, which limits future funding opportunity. Worse still, negative media coverage and analysis scrutiny can permanently hurt the company's market credibility. So we are going to point two, which is the legal and regulatory penalties. Secondly, ESG washing comes with legal consequences. Misleading ESG claims can lead to lawsuits, investigation, and hefty fines. Regulators like the SEC in the US, the EU Commission, and even local bodies like Bursa Malaysia are tightening enforcement. Violation could lead to fraud charges, restricted access to financing, and penalties on a global scale. This shows that ESG compliance is no longer just a legal requirement, but it is strategic business priority. Company must treat ESG seriously or face significantly financial and reputational losses. And I will pass it to the law Jin. Thank you.
Okay, so coming forward to the next slide, I'll be talking about how shareholders and stakeholders activism help prevent corporate misconduct. So first of all, stakeholder activism comes from NGO, media, regulators, and civil society. And it is more direct and public. For example, the Top Glove was exposed by the Guardians in 2018, which led to a US import ban. The pressure was then forced the company to inform. And there's a similar ban, which is the ST Group show. The ban was implemented after an NGO raised concern, and they respond with a remediation plan afterwards. Meanwhile, till today, 2025, FGB Holding is still under a ban as due to its slow progress. And this shows how sustained pressure keep the company accountable. On the other hand, shareholder activism is more subtle and worked through financial channel. ESG investor and fund responded by removing Top Glove and FGB from the FTSE for Good index, Bursa Malaysia, and the ST Greater ESG rating was downgraded to 2-star. This kind of capital pressure encouraged company to improve governance and transparency to regain investor confidence. So in short summary, the stakeholders apply external pressure through media regulation, while the shareholders influence through financial signals. So together, they play a powerful role in pushing company towards ethical practice. And that's it for mine, and I'll pass it to my colleague, Nick.
We have reached the final segment of our presentation where I'll be evaluating the extent to which Sime Darby Plantation's 2024 human rights disclosures address stakeholders' expectations and align with the global best practices and the current and future corporate governance reforms that have been or will be implemented to enhance corporate conduct towards workers. In 2022, Sime Darby Plantation, or SDP, came under global scrutiny after the US Customs and Border Protection issued a withhold release order due to evidence of forced labor practices across SDP's operations. As a result, various stakeholders, including investors, NGOs, regulators, and supply chain partners, have demanded greater transparency and accountability. The 2024 annual report marks SDP's most comprehensive attempt to respond to these concerns by realigning its ESG disclosures. First, it introduces an updated human rights charter referencing both the UNGPs and ILO core labor standards. Second, it enforces a zero recruitment fee policy. Third, SDP has strengthened its grievance mechanisms by implementing multilingual reporting tools. Additionally, it now conducts quarterly external human rights audits and continuous engagement with both Fair Labor Association and USCBP. Finally, SDP has launched human rights training for both its internal employees as well as its supply chain partners. From the investor and regulatory perspective, the disclosures largely meet expectations. The company was reinstated in the FTSE for Good Bursa Malaysia Index in 2024, which reflects regained credibility among ESG-conscious investors. The adoption of third-party verification mechanisms and a human right due diligence framework aligns with market demands for transparency and risk mitigation. These initiatives align with Pillar 2 of UNGPs, which emphasizes corporate responsibility to prevent and mitigate human rights abuses. However, not all stakeholders are fully convinced. Civil society groups and labor NGOs remain cautious due to lack of quantitative data. The report fails to provide the number of nature of complaints filed, how quickly and effectively issues were resolved, and details of any remediation efforts such as compensation for affected workers. In response to the global criticism for labor rights violations, the company has introduced major reforms to improve labor practices, increase transparency, and meet international standards like the UN Guiding Principles and ILO conventions. The key reforms implemented includes, first, including labor rights monitoring framework, which includes worker interviews, site audits, and grievance systems to detect forced labor risk. Second, human rights mitigation action plan, where over 50 corrective actions such as better recruitment fee, reimbursements to foreign workers, and more worker freedom. Third, sustainability committee, where it oversees ESG and human rights risk, reporting directly to the board to ensure accountability. Its external commitment includes a renewal of its commitment to ILO standards and the Responsible Business Alliance, applying these in supply contracts. Its future reforms include it will launch a digital worker welfare dashboard to track real-time grievances and contract conditions integrated into board-level ESG reviews. To sum it all up, Sime Darby Plantation has made significant progress in strengthening its human rights practices through policy reforms, board-level oversight, and global alignment. While improvements are evident, continued transparency and measurable outcomes will be key to fully rebuilding stakeholder trust and ensuring lasting ethical conduct. That will be it from Good 6. We appreciate you for listening and thank you very much.